Hello guys! Welcome back to Not Just Mecha! It's Marco here, and today we speed paint with a really serious focus on speed and on understanding where it can be most efficiently generated from. I've been working on these concepts for years, especially in the army/commission painting phase of my journey as a professional painter. But only now that my focus is shifting more and more into sharing and teaching, I'm really rationalizing and in the process optimizing a bunch of stuff that I started doing by pure instinct and intuition. Speed itself should never be the actual goal of the painting flow, because in that case, a puff from a spray can and a quick wash are probably the unbeatable peak of speed, or by exaggeration, playing with grey plastic. So, I prefer to talk about efficiency, because my real final goal is always to bring to the gaming table super cool models, with the bonus of doing it quickly. I'm never willing to cut on visual quality. With this perspective, the search for speed through an improved efficiency becomes an analysis of what painting is in general, not only painting miniatures and figures. What are the absolute key elements to deliver an effective and still impressive paint job? And an intriguing game of Jenga with the blocks of the process, to leave a tower that supports itself with the least amount of essential pieces. And a big part of this reasoning is recently coming from my work on Twitch, where thanks to the slower pace of the live streams, I can more easily work on display and competition pieces like this, that represent that solid and perfectly squared Jenga tower at the beginning of the game, ready to be taken apart. And honestly, can you really tell that there are a bunch of missing blocks here? I don't think so. So, let's see how you can achieve this visual trickery that will allow you to paint armies in a weekend and warbands in a single painting session, but with a guaranteed wow effect. After a technical coat of sealing black primer, here only to hide the oddly distracting green plastic and add extra thick, super strong and gaming friendly foundation of paint, I jump to the first chromatic step of the color and value climb that will quickly bring us from the deepest shadows to the extreme lights. Here I'm consciously working with a more classic gaming look. So for this project I'm keeping poetry and theatrical drama in check, focusing on a simple but effective general high level of contrast, perfect for the long-distance view of the models on the battlefield, which can be summarized in this violet is the complementary color of the diffused main tones and the greenish chromatic core of the scheme. Sometimes you don't need more than this. And I immediately move to the base of the idea of that green scheme, with no intermediate steps or any soft bridging of tones, to create a powerful and stark contrast from the very beginning. To keep things moving fast here, I'm using super solid opaque paints, but to avoid a too obvious and too rough dotty finish between all these extremely different colors, I add a bit of watery, fluid medium to the paint to automatically soften all the edges, still keeping most of the natural opacity of these colors. In general, I wouldn't mind a bit of roughness on this kind of subject, but transparency will be important later, so this bit of refinement will be handy. Same deal with this sudden jump into a light and vibrant lime green that I build up as a simple, straight zenithal light from the top, that will make the models easily visually work on any battlefield and from any angle. And if you are sarcastically thinking, so the airbrush is the key to speed? Well, yes, of course! We use tools to make the work easier and faster. So choosing and taking advantage of the best tool for a specific task is a big part of generating free extra speed. The conceptual engine for efficiency here is the high contrast, quick jumping between tones, temperatures and values, but the airbrush is adding mechanical, factual speed. The theory is solid, so you can apply the same concepts with layering or even dry brushing, with great satisfaction and similar results, but sadly not with the same timing on a chronometer. I use a bit of yellow to quickly add tonal variety, increase the temperature of the mid-lights, and add extra vibrance. And I take a little sidestep to bring out smoke effects and skins from the general scheme, using a basic light skin tone. Closing the climb to the lights with pure titanium white. Everything in this macro step is quick and loose, even the application of the extreme, more localized values, because precisely like a more classic, pure black and white sketch and zenithal light, I just needed to give me a rough modeling of shapes and volumes. But in this case, introducing also the general tones of shadows, lights, and a bit of the scheme itself, meant as outfits, I'm able to cut more than a couple of full steps and save a bunch of time. There's no way to cheat too much with metals on this size of models and these small details. But I still apply the same idea of color basing with an integrated chromatic and value richness, using inks to bring that variety and modulation into the super basic mid-value silver paints. I like to use two different metallic paints, only because of their different consistency. One thicker, for precise little elements in the middle of other colors that I don't want to mess up. And one fluid to reach difficult, deep or intricate spots, or quickly cover larger areas. And I layer a single level of wet blended contrast paints for wood, leather and bases. The almost random mixing and wet-on-wet application make these organic materials look very organic and complex with no effort. And a bit of matte medium into the pool of paint makes the layers a bit thicker and easier to control. And when dry, the finish becomes more compatible and uniform with the one all around these details. Oil paints are the big thing in this process. And here is the full insight. By design, what I have at this stage are the extremes of the scheme. Saturation, values, vibrancy, everything is at a peak. I subverted the classic order of operations that starts from base coating with mid-tones and mid-values, moving high contrast lights and shadows at the top of the process, both chronological and conceptual top. And I use the staining power and easy blending properties of oil paints to quickly establish the fluid mid-behavior of the connection and progression between the extremes. I know, it seems complicated, But let me elaborate. In miniature painting, we tend to give a lot of importance to base colors, that most of the time are the simple, local, intrinsic colors of an object. Let's say a red cape or a blue car. But in reality, those pure local tones are a minimal, microscopic part of the flow of lights and shadows that immediately start pushing and pulling the local hue into different colors and values depending on the nature of the light. To make it simple, a yellow light will turn the red into orange shades and the blue into a variety of green hues. So why spend so much time establishing a solid base color that is never really there and never really that useful? Let's focus on light. In practice, starting with a more solid representation of light and volumes, and then letting the middle kind of happen in between the pinch of lights and shadows and the modeling of the shapes. This is the theory, but let's move to the nitty-gritty practical side of all this. The choice of a dark violet oil paint for the general staining of the sketch is the main quote-unquote mechanical tool / speed enhancer of this stage, similar to using the airbrush in the previous one. The little amount of paint that remains in the recesses after the controlled removal of this imprimatura perfectly matches the shadows that I established in the very first step, setting the final, darkest and sharper shadows. And the pigments staining the upper areas interact with the bright green as complementary tones, generating a bunch of natural and rich desaturation, bringing everything down to the more realistic, grittier and dirty tones I planned. And thanks to the magic of oils, everything is naturally blended in a soft continuity. On top of this foundational work, I also spent some time adding a bunch of extra random tones, streaks in semi-transparency, weathering and subtle visual noise. Using oils is for sure one of the fastest and most satisfying ways to quote-unquote break the smoothness and add character to flat layers and open areas. And after a night of rest for the oil layer, I can safely jump back to acrylics to work on the sharp definition and the extreme lights. But first, I want to apply a little special effect on the green water and the warpstone crystals, using the glossiness and transparency of Tamiya clear paints. A powerful contrast of finishes on little elements like these is always cool when the minis are on the battlefield, similar to the effect of metallic paint next to a matte layer. For this stage, you can totally get away with a single high-value color for every major element of the scheme. I always like to have a warmer and a colder shade for every macro tone, to have more range and adaptability to the flow of temperatures of lights and shadows. But honestly, with the size of these models, this is probably true overkill. But I love Skaven too much, and they absolutely deserve the extra care. This step is where all the previous work is brought together and put into proper focus. Details and textures are only visible in well-lit areas, and borders and edges objectively catch a ton of light. So we can effectively localize the work in just a few limited areas exposed to that kind of light, and simplify a lot its nature. And with a good color matching, we can overlap all this information to all the previous work, and make it look like it has been part of the growth of every single previous step, generating a crazy amount of depth and visual richness. DGW Heavy Metal Agile Lighting is basically an extreme oversimplification of this idea and a drastic, crazy overcomplication of its practical application. Simplified extreme lights framing every single shape make every mass and detail easier to perceive and easier to read from the distance of the gaming table. And I'm totally doing that. But this stiff sharpness of the GW lines is at the same time toy factory looking, very unrealistic, and a true pain to paint. So why would you want to do that? What I'm offering you here is to transform the most dreaded, boring and complicated step of mainstream miniature painting into the most fun, creative and painterly stage ever. Not a bad deal, huh? In the virtual distance that the scale of the models represents, that kind of visual information becomes a blur of abstract shapes, not a laser-sharp outline. So, embrace the abstraction and let the brush move, jump and play around. The first blocks are more connected to the objective, physical behavior of light, and a more restrained, calculated, technical attitude. But here you can go absolutely crazy with the brushstrokes, and close the work with an overdose of delightful, unbounded creativity, instead of a soul-crushing microlining with no margin for error. Plus, from this point, there are no more boxes to tick, and you decide when the detailing is enough. At any point of this last stage, you'll have great models worthy of stepping into the battlefield. And here is the final result. A little more than 5 hours of work that, thanks to the efficiency of airbrushing and oil blending, have mostly been spent on the final acrylic render that, for my biased love for Skaven, ended up being more dense and richer than what I usually do for this kind of warbands. You can easily see the evolution of similar flows from past videos. The volumetric study is becoming each time more confident, but quick and sketchy. Oils or watercolor-like transparent applications do a heavier and heavier lifting, and texturing is becoming more and more abstract and painterly. I'm really curious to see the development of the watercolor retake in particular. That's already seeing an application on the Twitch projects. Don't worry, you will soon see the results applied to different models, also here on YouTube. If you like this video, give it a like and subscribe. Remember that you can ask me anything down below with a comment, you can follow my projects during the week using one of my socials, or watch me painting live on Twitch. Check the schedule of the streams on the Twitch homepage. And if you want to support my work, check my Patreon page and join the community, or maybe ask for a commission. See you next week, guys!